Any minute now, the president is set to announce new tariffs on imported cars. He was expected to announce them on April 2nd, along with a package of reciprocal tariffs on countries worldwide. Doing it today, perhaps to draw attention away from that signal story. Corporate America is becoming increasingly concerned about the effect of these tariffs on global trade. A survey of chief financial officers shows that tariffs are now their number one, as you see there, worry. Mary Lovely is a senior fellow at the nonpartisan Peterson Institute for International Economics, and she joins me now. Thanks so much for joining.
My pleasure.
I'm just going to start with a very basic question, because it still gets asked. Who pays for tariffs?
Well, we saw in the U.S.-China trade war that the tariff was passed through to the American buyer. So it may fall in the first instance on the American manufacturer who buys the input, who may then pass it on to the consumer, or it is passed through directly through the retail chain to the American consumer.
Yeah, and we've heard this that as relates to cars, which the president's going to announce these new tariffs on today, that's already increasing the price of cars by, in some cases, many thousands of dollars. There has been, as you know, mixed messaging, because the president will begin by saying he's going to impose massive tariffs on everything, and then he'll draw back, give some exceptions, pull back perhaps some of those top-line numbers there. In terms of economic impact, does that uncertainty and back and forth impose its own costs on growth forecasts?
Absolutely. There's a long history of empirical studies in the economics literature showing that uncertainty about policy does have a chilling effect, particularly on investments. And we know that companies are right now struggling to figure out where are they going to make investments, how are they going to rearrange their supply chains in light of U.S. policy uncertainty.
You've written about this. You said what Mr. Trump is doing with tariffs is a result of a lost consensus about how the United States should interact with other countries in the global economy. What he says he's trying to do with these tariffs is to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. But when you look at, for instance, the supply chain for cars in North America, it's very integrated. There's a lot that goes back and forth more than once. Can he do, in short order, what he's proposing to do, which is to try to basically force, via financial pressure, all that manufacturing back inside the U.S.?
Well, obviously not in short order. One would argue not even within this term. Building a manufacturing plant like an auto plant is a long-term process. And of course, by using tariffs to facilitate that, especially tariffs on Canada and Mexico, he is going to really disrupt the auto industry rather than help it. What we are going to see, of course, is higher prices for consumers and decreased sales in the United States. Americans will keep their cars longer. They'll have to. They won't be able to afford them. They'll also have a lot less choice because, you know, autos that are sold in small amounts are basically not assembled here. They're assembled overseas. Those autos simply won't be shipped here anymore. So we're going to see higher prices, lower demand, and less choice.
When I speak, for instance, to Canadian officials, they say that this has fundamentally changed the Canadian trading relationship with the U.S., that regardless of what President Trump does going forward, perhaps he wakes up one day and decides, well, I'm done with Canada, but although all signals pointing in the opposite direction, that from the Canadian perspective, that relationship has fundamentally changed. There's no going back, that they're going to redirect as best they can trade and trade agreements elsewhere. Is that, in your view, where this is going?
Yes, I think it is, because President Trump is basically ripping up some of his own agreements. So if we see that American president won't even, be enforcing his own agreements, then what faith is there that he will enforce agreements that are made in the past? At issue today might be the U.S.-Japan free trade agreement, which was negotiated by President Trump, and which largely was concessions by Japan on our agricultural exports. If today the president decides to put tariffs on vehicles that Japan exports to the United States, it's very possible that Japan said, well, this agreement's not worth the paper that it's written on, and we'll just rip it up. Replace tariffs on your agricultural exports.
Yeah. Well, Mary Lovely, I'm sure it's not the last time we talk about this. Thanks so much for joining.